Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today we're embarking on a really crucial and honestly incredibly rewarding deep dive. We're calling it Mastering C2 Vocabulary for Exam Success. So if you're aiming for that elite level in English proficiency, or maybe you just crave the ability to express yourself with real clarity and impact, you are definitely in the right place. This isn't just about memorizing words, is it? It's more about unlocking new dimensions of communication. Think of it almost like gaining a secret weapon for your linguistic toolkit.
Indeed. And at the C2 level, the expectation really goes beyond just understanding things. It demands that you can adeptly navigate really intricate texts, articulate even the subtlest differences in meaning, and demonstrate a remarkable level of precision and fluency. That applies to both your written and your spoken English. So our mission today really is to equip you with the tools to do exactly that. We've put together a powerful collection of sophisticated, nuanced, high-impact words, and each one has been selected carefully for its relevance in those high-stakes exams, but also for its real-world use, its academic significance, and even, sometimes, its cultural resonance.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit then. So whether you're, say, crafting compelling essays or maybe engaging in spirited debates or even interpreting abstract literary passages, mastering this kind of vocabulary is undoubtedly going to elevate your performance. It's designed to help you stand out, as a truly advanced user of English. We'll be exploring definitions, but also example sentences and the context, how to use them, just to help you fully absorb the meaning and the tone of each term. So are you ready to upgrade your communication skills, boost that confidence sort of piece by piece as we build this powerful linguistic toolkit together? So where do we begin? This linguistic landscape is so rich. I'm always fascinated by how just one single well-chosen word can paint such a vivid picture, especially when we're talking about people. Let's start there with words that help us describe people, their characteristics, how they interact, getting to the real essence of their being.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And these aren't just synonyms for simpler words, They carry this weight of implication. They allow for a much more refined portrayal of someone's disposition or their interaction style. They give you the brushstrokes, as you say, to paint a truly three-dimensional portrait.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Okay, take, for instance, the word genial. The definition is simply friendly and cheerful. My first thought might be, well, isn't that just nice or pleasant? But I know at C2, there's always a deeper layer, isn't there?
Precisely. And what's fascinating here is how genial really does go beyond just being friendly. It implies a real warmth, a pleasantness, and often this radiant good cheer that seems to genuinely emanate from the person. It's not just that they act nice, they seem to possess an inherently welcoming disposition, like an infectious warmth that makes others feel instantly at ease, maybe even uplifted. Think of that relative who just lights up a room when they walk in.
So it's about their whole aura then. Not just an action, but a fundamental characteristic. For instance, you might say, despite the intense pressure of the negotiation, the CEO maintained a genial demeanor, easing tensions in the room. That tells you so much more than just saying the CEO is friendly.
Absolutely. Using genial really elevates a basic description. It moves from just nice to a more sophisticated portrayal of their inherent character. It signals this consistently pleasant, accommodating nature. You'd use this to describe a really positive atmosphere or perhaps a welcoming personality, particularly in maybe formal or semi-formal settings where that warmth is a real asset, whether it's cultivated or just natural. Can you think of a time where someone's geniality totally shifted the dynamic, maybe in a tough meeting you've been in?
Oh, I certainly can. It really does make a huge difference. Okay, so if genial captures that inherent warmth, what about their social energy? That brings us neatly to gregarious definition. Fond of company, sociable. And the example given is, the gregarious child made friends easily at the new school.
Yeah, this word captures that inherent enjoyment of companionship and social interaction. It's more than just being, say, outgoing. It really highlights a natural inclination towards seeking out and actually thriving in social engagement. A gregarious person genuinely draws energy from being around others. They don't just tolerate company, they actively seek it out and flourish in it. Interesting fact, the root of the word grex actually means flock. So you can think of someone who loves being part of the flock.
That distinction, drawing energy from social interaction, that feels key. An outgoing person might be good at starting conversations, sure, but a gregarious person finds real joy, real invigoration in social settings, parties, big group events. They're probably the first ones suggesting everyone get together.
Right. And interestingly, this word isn't always positive, depending on context. A gregarious person who is also, let's say, indolent, a word we'll get to, might be more interested in chatting than getting work done. But yeah, it's ideal for characterizing extroverted individuals or describing environments where social interaction is abundant and encouraged. For instance, the annual conference was a real hub for gregarious professionals to network and exchange ideas. How might you use gregarious maybe to describe someone who actively dislikes being alone?
Ooh, that's an interesting twist. It just shows how these words add all these layers. Okay, now let's look at a word that also describes a way of speaking, but with a very different and quite negative connotation. Glib. The definition: fluent and voluble, but insincere and shallow. And the example is quite telling. The politician's glib responses failed to address the serious concerns.
Yes, this word carries a really significant negative weight, as you pointed out. It describes a smoothness of speech that, sort of paradoxically, conceals a fundamental lack of depth or thought or sincerity. It's not just fluent, it's a deceptive fluency. The words flow easily, maybe confidently, but they ring hollow. They fail to actually engage with the substance of the issue. The speaker might sound polished, but their words lack genuine engagement or honesty.
That distinction is incredibly important, isn't it? So glib really implies a deceptive fluency. Words flow easily, but they ring hollow. You might hear someone speak quickly, confidently, but glib tells you that underneath that fluency, there's not much real thought or honesty. For example, his glib apology after the argument only exacerbated her frustration, as it seemed completely insincere.
It's such an essential term for critical analysis. When you're looking at speech or writing that seems superficial, maybe evasive, or perhaps designed to obscure rather than clarify, it hints at a speaker who values appearance over substance. So when you encounter a situation where someone's response just feels a bit too easy, maybe a bit too smooth for the complexity of the issue, glib is probably the word you're reaching for. Can you recall a time you heard a glib explanation or promise that just immediately made you skeptical?
Oh, many times. It's a very useful word for articulating that exact feeling of unease. Following that, we have histrionic, defined as overly theatrical or melodramatic in character or style. The example is, her histrionic reaction to the minor criticism was embarrassing.
Ah, yes. Here we're delving into exaggerated emotional expression. It's often performed for effect rather than being a genuine outpouring of feeling. It implies a level of drama, of performance, that can make others question the sincerity of the emotions being displayed. It's like an actor who's constantly on stage, even when they're off duty, playing to some invisible audience.
Right, like someone is constantly performing, even in everyday life, and it can be quite jarring in a normal context. Using histrionic is perfect for describing that overly dramatic behavior, or maybe even artistic performances that lean heavily into melodrama. It gives you a precise way to express that sense of exaggerated display. Like imagine a dramatic performer who shouts every single line, or someone who, collapses in tears over spilling a drink.
Indeed. And it can definitely be applied to art and literature, too. You might say, the director's histrionic adaptation of the classic novel alienated many critics who preferred a more nuanced interpretation. It's fundamentally about a style that prioritizes dramatic flair over, perhaps, genuine emotional truth. Have you ever seen a performance, or even a real-life situation, where someone's behavior felt just undeniably histrionic? What was the immediate impact on you or others observing?
I definitely have, and yeah, it often creates a sense of discomfort or awkwardness. Okay, moving on to a word describing a really strong sense of calm. Imperturbable, defined as unable to be upset or excited. Calm. The example illustrates this perfectly. She remained imperturbable despite the chaos around her.
This word speaks to a remarkable strength of character. It really does. It implies maintaining composure and inner stillness, even when facing significant challenges or extreme pressure. It's a much higher level of calm than just being, say, relaxed or unbothered. It suggests a fundamental, almost unbreakable steadiness, an emotional resilience that seems almost immune to external turmoil. The individual isn't just acting calm, they genuinely are calm deep down.
It really conveys a profound sense of resilience, doesn't it? So you'd use imperturbable to describe someone who keeps their cool under duress, especially in professional or high-pressure situations, where their unflappability is a key trait. It paints this picture of unwavering self-possession, like a crisis negotiator, or maybe a surgeon during a really complex operation.
That's a great example. Or another one could be, the ancient Stoic philosophers aimed to cultivate an imperturbable spirit, believing it was key to true happiness. This highlights its philosophical depth. It's like having an inner fortress, a mental discipline that prevents emotional disruption. It's not about being emotionless, mind you, but about not being swayed by emotions to the point where you lose your equilibrium. Can you imagine a scenario where someone's imperturbable nature might actually be perceived negatively, perhaps as coldness or detachment?
Ooh, that's a fascinating angle, how a strength can sometimes be misinterpreted depending on the situation. Next, we encounter indolent, meaning wanting to avoid activity or exertion, lazy. The example states, his indolent attitude prevented him from achieving his potential.
This word highlights an inherent, almost pervasive disinclination towards effort. It's not just about being lazy in a particular moment. It suggests a deep-seated attitude, a consistent preference for inactivity. And that often leads to underachievement or, like the example says, the squandering of potential. There's a passive quality to it, an almost comfortable avoidance of hard work or responsibility. It implies a fundamental lack of drive.
So it really describes more of a character trait than just a fleeting moment of laziness, right? Like, the indolent cat spent its days lounging in sunbeams, barely stirring even for meals. That fits perfectly. It's very effective for describing a long-term state of inaction, especially when you're discussing productivity, motivation, or maybe the reasons behind someone not reaching their goals.
Indeed. And the word itself comes from Latin, meaning without pain, which sort of suggests a comfort found in idleness. It often carries a subtle judgment, implying that potential is being wasted. For example, the team's project lagged due to the indolent approach of a few key members. When you hear or read indolent, what kind of imagery comes to mind for you? Is it always negative, or can there be a sort of harmless, maybe even charming indolence sometimes?
That's a good question. It certainly paints a vivid, often quite passive picture. And finally, in this first section about people, we have indomitable, a very powerful word. It means impossible to subdue or defeat. The example, her indomitable spirit helped her overcome numerous obstacles.
Yes, this word conveys immense inner strength, an absolutely unbreakable will, and profound resilience. It's a descriptor for someone who simply cannot be overcome no matter the adversity, no matter the odds stacked against them. It speaks to a spirit that refuses to yield, that is utterly unyielding in its determination. It's often used for figures who demonstrate incredible courage and persistence when facing overwhelming odds.
It's truly inspiring, isn't it? It makes you think of heroes or survivors. You'd use indomitable in narratives about overcoming significant adversity, definitely. Or to describe powerful leadership qualities, or maybe just to celebrate the enduring strength of the human spirit in really challenging circumstances. Think of a historical figure who just never gave up, no matter the setbacks.
Absolutely. Another example might be, despite repeated failures, the scientist's indomitable pursuit of a cure eventually led to a breakthrough. It signifies a spirit that rebounds, presses forward, maybe even stronger than before. It's a word that evokes a sense of awe and admiration, a deep respect for that profound inner strength. Can you think of a situation where you witnessed an indomitable spirit, maybe in person or perhaps in a story you admire? What was the key quality that made that spirit seem so unbreakable?
What's truly fascinating here, looking back at this group, is how these words move beyond just basic descriptions. They reveal these deeper layers of personality and social dynamics. They allow you, the speaker or writer, to articulate subtle judgments or admirations of character, giving your communication so much greater depth. Using these terms really demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of human nature itself. They transform a flat description into a nuanced, insightful portrait.
And that depth isn't just limited to describing people. It actually opens up entire new avenues for dissecting complex ideas and arguments. Which brings us perfectly to our next set of words. These are really the tools for intellectual engagement. They help with evaluating the validity and relevance of information and for constructing coherent, compelling arguments of your own. They are absolutely indispensable for academic and professional discourse.
Exactly. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Shifting from people to ideas, arguments, the very nature of truth. These words are crucial for dissecting complex concepts and making your own arguments much more robust. They allow you to participate in nuanced discussions at a truly advanced level to argue with real precision. Let's start with germane, which means relevant to a subject under consideration. The example is clear. His comments were not germane to the discussion at hand. Now, when I first learned this word, I thought, well, why not just say relevant? What's the extra nuance?
That's a common and very fair question. Germane carries a more formal and I'd say precise connotation than just relevant. When something is germane, It directly pertains to and is appropriate for the exact matter being discussed. It contributes to its progression in a meaningful way. It implies a focus on topic contribution, especially important in structured environments like debates or academic papers. It often contrasts with something that might be, tangentially related but ultimately unhelpful or distracting.
I see. So it implies a direct, almost essential connection to the core topic. You'd use germane when you're evaluating the pertinence of information, ensuring that every point really contributes meaningfully to the overall discourse. For example, the lawyer argued that the new evidence was germane to the defense's case and should be admitted. It helps maintain clarity and effectiveness, especially when you're dealing with complex topics.
Absolutely. Think of it as filtering out the noise to get to the actual core of the discussion. If something is not germane, it's essentially a distraction. It's often used when you're trying to keep a discussion on track or evaluate the strength of an argument based on its direct applicability. Can you think of a recent news discussion or maybe a meeting where some points were definitely not germane and how that kind of impacted the conversation?
Oh, I can think of many examples. It really drags things down. Okay, our next word is hackneyed, defined as lacking originality or freshness, overused. The example sentence immediately brings it to life. The speech was full of hackneyed phrases and cliches.
Yes, this term delves right into the concept of cliché. It's about how excessive use diminishes the impact and originality of expression. It describes words or ideas that have simply lost their power, their vibrancy, their freshness through sheer repetition. They become predictable, uninspired. They don't evoke any new thought or feeling. They just sort of wash over you because you've heard them countless times before.
It's a great word for critiquing uninspired writing or maybe thought patterns, isn't it? Using hackneyed shows you appreciate fresh, impactful language and can identify when something falls short. It encourages more creative, compelling expression, like the plot of the romantic comedy was so hackneyed that you could predict every twist and turn from the very first scene.
Exactly. It signals a lack of intellectual or creative vitality. It implies a certain laziness in expression, perhaps, or a failure to innovate. When something is hackneyed, it suggests a lack of depth or original thought. It's a very useful critical term, particularly in literary analysis or when evaluating public speaking. Have you ever read a book or watched a movie where the dialogue felt so hackneyed, it just pulled you right out of the experience? What's a common hackneyed phrase you personally wish people would stop using?
That's a fun challenge. There are so many. Moving on, we have heretical. Now, while its original definition is about religious heresy, believing in or practicing religious heresy, the example expands its use. His heretical views challenge the orthodox teachings of the church.
Right. And beyond that religious context, heretical can be applied much more broadly. It fits any idea that fundamentally contradicts accepted norms, established doctrines, or conventional wisdom within any field, science, art, politics. It highlights intellectual bravery, perhaps, or maybe just highly contentious thinking that dares to challenge the status quo. And it often invites strong opposition from those who adhere to the established order. It's really about a radical departure from accepted thought.
It's powerful, isn't it? Suggesting a profound break from established thought, maybe even a dangerous one in some historical contexts. So you can use heretical in discussions about paradigm shifts in science, or intellectual rebellion in philosophy, or challenges to established systems of thought, whether in art, economics, social theory. For instance, in the 19th century, Darwin's theory of evolution was considered heretical by many religious scholars and even some scientists.
Indeed. It implies not just disagreement, but a fundamental rejection of core tenets. It's a strong word, often used to describe ideas that provoke significant pushback, precisely because they threaten the very foundation of prevailing beliefs. When you hear heretical, it should immediately conjure an image of a groundbreaking, often controversial idea. Can you think of a heretical idea from history, maybe in science or politics, that was initially rejected but eventually gained acceptance, or at least profoundly changed how people thought?
That's a great way to think about its historical impact, really puts it in perspective. Now, let's discuss hyperbole. Defined as exaggerated statements or claims not meant to be taken literally. The example is practical. The advertisement used hyperbole to promote the product's benefits.
Yes, this word focuses squarely on a rhetorical device used for emphasis. While it definitely involves exaggeration, it's usually not intended to deceive if it's understood as non-literal. It serves to create a strong impression or highlight a point through overstatement, or sometimes just to amuse. And it's incredibly common in everyday language, not just formal writing. "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse." That's a classic example of hyperbole.
Right. And it's crucial for analyzing persuasive language, literary techniques, or maybe recognizing sensationalism in the media. Understanding hyperbole allows you to see beyond the literal words to the intended effect, whether that's to amuse, impress, or simply grab attention. Like, the comedian's act was full of hilarious hyperbole about his disastrous dating life.
Yes, often used for comedic effect or to add dramatic flair. However, the line between hyperbole and outright deception can sometimes be a bit blurry, can't it? Especially in advertising or maybe political rhetoric. The key, I think, is the intent and the expectation that the listener will understand it's not meant literally. When you encounter hyperbole, how do you personally determine if it's meant to be humorous and impactful, or if it potentially crosses the line into misleading territory?
That's a really important distinction for critical thinking, definitely. Next up, we have ideology, defined as a system of ideas and ideals, especially one that forms the basis of economic or political theory. The example emphasizes its impact. The party's ideology influenced all of their policy decisions.
This term highlights the foundational nature of belief systems, how they underpin actions, policies, entire societal structures. It's more comprehensive than just saying beliefs, because it implies a structured, coherent framework of thought, one that guides behavior and decision-making on a pretty large scale. An ideology provides a lens, really, through which individuals or groups understand the world and their place in it, and then act upon that understanding.
So it's essential for discussing things like political science, philosophy, social movements, or even just understanding the underlying principles of organizational cultures. Ideology helps you grasp the deep-seated motivations behind collective actions and societal structures. For example, the new CEO sought to instill a company-wide ideology of innovation and customer centricity.
Exactly. It's almost like the operating system for groups or individuals' thinking. It shapes their priorities, their moral judgments, their goals. It's not just a random collection of opinions, but a cohesive set of principles. When you're analyzing historical events or contemporary issues, understanding the underlying ideologies at play is absolutely paramount. Can you think of an ideology that has profoundly shaped maybe a historical period or a modern society? How did it influence people's daily lives?
That's a great way to connect it to the real world, makes it very tangible. And finally, for this section on ideas, we have incontrovertible, a very strong word, meaning not able to be denied or disputed. The example highlights its power. The DNA evidence provided incontrovertible proof of his guilt.
Yes, this word emphasizes absolute certainty and irrefutability. When something is incontrovertible, there's simply no room left for doubt or argument. It stands as undeniable fact because the evidence supporting it is so strong, it just cannot be reasonably challenged. It really represents the highest standard of proof.
It's a powerful descriptor then for undeniable facts, conclusive evidence, or arguments that are so well supported they just can't be assailed. Using incontrovertible conveys ultimate conviction and clarity in your assertions, leaving no room for debate, like the economic data presented incontrovertible evidence of the recession.
That's a perfect use case. Incontrovertible facts are the bedrock of strong arguments and reliable conclusions. It's a word often used in legal, scientific, or academic contexts where precision and certainty are absolutely paramount. It signifies a point beyond dispute. When you're trying to build an argument yourself, how does having an incontrovertible piece of evidence change your approach or maybe just your confidence?
That's a fantastic question. It certainly boosts confidence tremendously, knowing you have that solid ground. What's crucial here, I think, with this whole set is how these words provide the vocabulary to make those critical distinctions. Between what is merely plausible and what is truly provable. They allow you to engage with arguments and information with much greater intellectual rigor, pinpointing exactly where the strength or weakness of an argument lies. These words are like your intellectual scalpel, helping you dissect complex ideas with real precision.
And just as we need a scalpel to analyze ideas, we also need precise language to articulate negative circumstances and unwanted qualities. So moving on, let's turn our attention to words that provide the specificity needed to describe the less pleasant, but often very real, aspects of life and human experience. They move beyond simple negatives like bad or wrong to reveal precise shades of fault or difficulty, giving your critiques real teeth.
Yes, this section equips us with the nuanced language to critique, analyze, and describe adverse elements more effectively. It allows for more impactful communication when discussing problems or shortcomings. It's about giving voice to the disagreeable with accuracy. Let's start with gratuitous. It means uncalled for, lacking good reason, unwarranted. The example given is quite illustrative. The movie contained gratuitous violence that added nothing to the plot.
Yes, this word explores the idea of something being excessive, unnecessary, and often pointless, to the extent sometimes of being offensive or serving no constructive purpose at all. It implies a certain thoughtlessness, perhaps, or maybe a deliberate choice to include something without proper justification, adding it simply for effect or shock value, rather than for narrative or logical necessity.
Right, so if you're critiquing an element in art or an argument or an action and you feel it serves no real purpose other than maybe shock value or just lazy execution, gratuitous is the perfect word. It's a sharp tool for precise criticism. For example, the gratuitous insults hurled during the debate only serve to alienate potential voters.
Indeed. It's fundamentally about redundancy or excessiveness that often detracts rather than adds value. It suggests something that is surplus to requirements and, as a result, often unwelcome. Think about a plot twist that seems just thrown in without logical progression, or maybe a joke that is offensive without actually being clever. When you see something gratuitous, what does it typically tell you about the creator's or speaker's intentions, or maybe lack thereof?
It certainly signals a lack of thought, or maybe pandering. Next, we have heinous, defined as utterly odious or wicked. The example is stark. The heinous crime shocked the entire community.
This word is really reserved for actions that evoke extreme moral condemnation and profound revulsion. It's far beyond just bad or wrong. It describes something shockingly evil, an act that deeply offends our collective sense of morality and decency, often inspiring widespread horror. It's for actions that are truly abominable, causing deep moral outrage.
It's a word that conveys a profound sense of horror, isn't it? You feel it viscerally. You'd use heinous to describe truly abhorrent acts or situations that evoke strong negative emotional responses and widespread condemnation. It leaves absolutely no doubt as to the severity of the offense, like the dictator's heinous acts against his own people are remembered with disgust and condemnation.
Precisely. It's a word that almost demands a strong emotional response, a sense of deep moral failing. It's definitely not used lightly. It implies a deliberate malice or perhaps a complete disregard for human dignity or life. Can you think of an act from history or maybe literature that you would unambiguously describe as heinous? What specific elements make that act so profoundly wicked in your estimation?
Our next term is illicit, meaning forbidden by law, rules, or custom. The example shows its common usage. The police discovered illicit drugs hidden in the warehouse.
Yes, this word focuses squarely on the unauthorized or illegal nature of something. It often implies a hidden, clandestine, or secretive aspect, suggesting that something is being done against established norms, regulations, or societal customs. This makes it both forbidden and often necessarily concealed. It points to an activity operating outside legitimate boundaries.
It's highly useful then for discussing legal, ethical, or social prohibitions and their violations. Illicit helps you describe activities or goods that are specifically disallowed, adding that layer of hidden transgression to your description. For example, the journalist uncovered an illicit arms trade operating just across the border.
That's a great example. It can refer to anything from illegal substances, as in the first example, to perhaps forbidden romantic relationships or secret deals. The core idea is that it's not sanctioned or allowed by the prevailing rules or laws. It hints at a hidden world operating outside the accepted framework. When you encounter something described as illicit, what does that immediately tell you about its nature or the context in which it likely exists?
Then there's incendiary. It's defined as tending to stir up conflict, or literally setting things on fire. The example is quite relevant to current events, sadly. The politician's incendiary remarks sparked protests in the streets.
This word powerfully captures that double meaning. Literally, yes, it can set things alight. But metaphorically, and perhaps more commonly used this way, it has the power to ignite strong reactions, discord, or even violence. It suggests a deliberate provocation, often aimed at stirring up intense emotions, divisions, or social unrest. It's like language that acts like a spark thrown into a powder keg.
It's a crucial word, then, for analyzing rhetoric that deliberately provokes anger, hostility, or intense disagreement. When you describe comments as incendiary, you're pointing out their dangerous potential to cause significant social unrest or conflict. For instance, the newspaper published an incendiary editorial that succeeded only in polarizing public opinion further.
Indeed. It's a term often applied to rhetoric, as you said, but it can also describe objects or materials, like an incendiary device. The key is its potential to cause an explosion, whether that's literal or figurative. It implies a dangerous and destabilizing effect. Can you think of a historical speech or maybe a statement that could be accurately described as incendiary? What was the immediate fallout or consequence of those particular words?
Let's look at incessant, meaning continuing without pause or interruption. The example is something many people can probably relate to. The incessant noise from construction kept the neighbors awake.
Ah, yes, this term emphasizes a relentless, unceasing nature. It just goes on and on. It's often used to describe something annoying or overwhelming or burdensome, precisely because of its continuous, unending quality. It paints a picture of an inescapable presence, something that just keeps going, often to the point of irritation or even exhaustion for those experiencing it.
It perfectly captures that feeling of something that just won't stop, doesn't it? So incessant is ideal for describing persistent conditions, sounds, or activities that are difficult to escape or endure due to their relentless continuity. For example, the incessant demands of his new job left him with very little time for his family or personal life.
That's a vivid example of its impact beyond just sound. It implies a wearing down, a constant pressure. While it's often negative, as in these examples, it can occasionally be neutral or maybe even slightly positive, like the incessant flow of new ideas from the research team. But typically, yes, it carries that sense of something tiresome simply because it never lets up. What's one incessant thing in your daily life that you sometimes wish would just pause, even for a moment?
Oh, the list is probably too long to mention. Our next word is incongruous, defined as not in harmony or keeping with the surroundings or other aspects. The example, his casual attire was incongruous with the formal setting.
This term explores that sense of being strikingly out of place, clashing or inconsistent with its environment or other elements around it. It creates a feeling of discord, oddity, or a noticeable lack of fit. It draws immediate attention precisely because there's a mismatch. It's fundamentally about a jarring lack of harmony between two or more things.
It's a wonderful word for pointing out stylistic clashes, like in the example, or maybe logical inconsistencies in an argument, or simply things that just don't belong where they are. Using incongruous signals that something stands out specifically because it doesn't align with expectations. Like, the bright modern sculpture looked incongruous amidst the crumbling ancient ruins.
That paints a clear picture, doesn't it? It highlights a juxtaposition that feels wrong or awkward or unexpected, something that doesn't quite fit the pattern. It challenges our expectations of what should belong together. Think of an argument where one piece of evidence simply doesn't align logically with the rest. When you encounter something incongruous, what's your immediate reaction or feeling? Is it amusement, confusion, something else?
Finally, in this category of negative descriptions, we have inane. It means silly, lacking sense or meaning. The example is quite pointed. The comedian's inane jokes failed to amuse the sophisticated audience.
Yes, this word highlights emptiness, foolishness, or a profound lack of substance. It's often applied to comments, actions, or ideas that are trivial, utterly devoid of intellectual merit, or completely nonsensical. It suggests a complete absence of thought or serious intent, making them seem utterly pointless or even stupid.
So it's very useful for critiquing humor that falls flat, like in the example, or arguments that lack any substance, or behavior that is perceived as shallow or utterly foolish. Inane helps you pinpoint and dismiss something as utterly without value or meaning. He spent the entire meeting making inane comments that contributed absolutely nothing to the discussion.
That's a perfect illustration. It's definitely stronger than just silly. It carries this connotation of vacant foolishness. It suggests a complete absence of intelligence or purpose behind the words or actions. When you hear something described as inane, it often makes you question the speaker's judgment, or perhaps even their intelligence. Can you think of a situation where you've witnessed or heard an inane comment that just left you speechless, perhaps due to its sheer lack of sense?
Too many to count, unfortunately. So if we connect this section to the bigger picture, these words really help us articulate the specific nature of adverse situations or negative attributes. They allow for a more precise and impactful critique or description, moving beyond vague terms like bad to pinpoint the exact failing or discord. They elevate your ability to analyze and convey deficiencies with real clarity, giving you the power to name the precise problem effectively.
And just as we need precise words for challenges and negatives, we also need them for describing states of perfection, unchanging truths, and specific conditions. So now let's explore words that bring remarkable precision to our descriptions of states, conditions, and qualities. These are like the fine brushstrokes of language, allowing you to convey the highest standards or specific natural states with absolute clarity. They lend considerable authority to your descriptions.
Absolutely. These words truly enable you to observe and report with exceptional accuracy, specifying the exact quality or status of something. They are essential, I think, for crafting truly polished and detailed descriptions at that C2 level. Let's begin with immaculate. Its definition: perfectly clean, neat or tidy, or free from fault or stain. The example: her immaculate appearance impressed the job interviewers. My initial thought is just very clean, but again, there must be more to it.
There is, definitely. This word emphasizes absolute perfection or spotlessness. It goes far beyond simply clean or tidy to convey a sense of utter flawlessness, as if nothing could possibly detract from its pristine condition. It suggests an almost untouched quality, whether that's physical or even moral.
Right. So you'd use immaculate to describe physical appearance, cleanliness, or even perfect conduct, implying a pristine, flawless state. It communicates an incredibly high standard, leaving absolutely no room for imperfection. The antique car was restored to its immaculate original condition, gleaming under the lights.
Exactly. It's often used when an extremely high standard of cleanliness or presentation is expected or achieved. And as you hinted, it can also be used metaphorically for things that are without fault or blame, like someone having an immaculate reputation. It conveys this sense of ultimate purity and perfection. Can you recall a time you encountered something so immaculate it genuinely made a lasting impression on you? What was it about its flawlessness that stood out?
Next, we have imminent, which means about to happen. The example is quite evocative. The dark clouds indicated that rain was imminent.
Yes, this word focuses on the immediacy of an event. It often carries a strong sense of anticipation or sometimes even foreboding, depending on the context. It implies that something is on the very verge of occurring, making its arrival seem all but certain and very, very close at hand. It creates this sense of urgency and impending presence.
It's excellent then for creating suspense or indicating an approaching event or describing a state of being on the cusp of something significant. Imminent really heightens the sense of urgency or impending change. The country faced an imminent economic crisis if drastic measures were not taken swiftly.
That's a powerful example. It implies a state of readiness or perhaps dread for something to happen very soon, often something significant, or maybe even unavoidable. It's often used in contexts of warning or preparation, as in an imminent threat or imminent danger. When you hear something described as imminent, what's your immediate emotional response? Is it usually anticipation or dread or maybe something else entirely?
Now, let's consider immutable, defined as unchanging over time or unable to be changed. The example speaks to fundamental truths. The laws of physics are considered immutable principles.
This term speaks to absolute resistance to change. It suggests a fundamental, unalterable, and often eternal nature. When something is immutable, it simply cannot be modified, swayed, or affected by external forces or even the passage of time. It denotes permanence and an unyielding quality.
It's perfect for describing universal truths, foundational laws, or unyielding principles that stand the test of time. Immutable conveys a sense of permanence and unchallengeable reality. The immutable fact of human mortality reminds us to cherish every moment.
That's a profound application. It's a word often used in philosophical, scientific, or legal context to describe things that are considered absolute and fixed. It carries this weighty sense of unwavering certainty. When something is declared immutable, what does that tell you about its perceived authority or its foundational status?
Following that, we have impartial, meaning treating all rivals or disputants equally, fair and just. The example is clear and important. The judge remained impartial throughout the controversial trial.
Yes, this word highlights the complete absence of bias, prejudice, or favoritism. It is an absolutely crucial quality for fairness, objectivity, and ensuring that all parties are considered equally, regardless of their position, influence, or any personal connections. It signifies a perspective that is balanced and fundamentally free from personal interest or preference.
So you'd use impartial when discussing justice, ethics, neutrality, or objective assessment in any context where fairness is absolutely paramount. It emphasizes an unbiased perspective, which is vital for credibility and trust. An impartial review committee was established to evaluate the competing proposals fairly.
Absolutely. It's about maintaining a neutral stance and making judgments based purely on facts and merits, without personal feelings clouding the assessment. It really is a cornerstone of any trustworthy system, whether it's legal, academic, or even just giving advice. When you seek an impartial opinion on something, what kind of outcome or advice are you hoping to receive? What makes it valuable?
Our next word is impeccable, defined as in accordance with the highest standards, faultless. The example: His impeccable manners impressed everyone at the formal dinner.
This is similar in feel to immaculate, but as you noted, often applied more specifically to conduct, performance, or taste. Impeccable denotes absolute flawlessness and adherence to the most elevated standards possible in a given domain. It means there isn't a single blemish or fault to be found in how something is done or presented. True perfection.
It's an excellent word for describing exemplary behavior, perfect execution of a task, or maybe sophisticated style and taste. When you say something is impeccable, you're praising its absolute perfection and incredibly high quality. The chef's impeccable presentation of the dish was as impressive as its flavor.
That's a perfect application. It implies a mastery and an extraordinary attention to detail that results in perfection. It conveys a strong sense of reliability and excellence. It's often used when praising someone's professional qualities or perhaps a refined aesthetic sense. Have you ever encountered someone with impeccable taste or maybe an impeccable work ethic? What was it that made their quality so stand out and noticeable?
Let's discuss incisive, meaning accurately analytical, clear-cut, and distinct. The example is compelling. Her incisive analysis of the problem impressed the board members.
Yes. This word focuses on the sharpness, the penetration, and the insightful quality of thought or expression. It describes something that gets directly to the core of an issue, cutting through complexity and superficiality with remarkable clarity and deep understanding. It's really about keen perception and analytical rigor.
So you'd use incisive to commend sharp intellect, insightful commentary, or highly effective problem solving that gets right to the heart of the matter without wasting time. It speaks to a powerful and precise mental faculty. The journalist's incisive questions expose the weaknesses in the government's argument.
Precisely. It's about intellectual penetration, the ability to see and articulate the very essence of a complex situation. It implies intelligence and clarity of thought, often leading to profound understanding or revealing insights. An incisive mind doesn't just scratch the surface, it digs deep and articulates the fundamental truths clearly. When you hear an incisive remark or analysis, how does it typically make you feel? Perhaps illuminated or maybe even challenged?
And finally, in this section on precision, we have indefatigable. This is an impressive word, meaning persisting tirelessly. The example. The indefatigable researcher worked day and night on the project.
This term emphasizes unyielding endurance and unwavering commitment, absolutely tireless. It highlights exceptional dedication and perseverance without showing any signs of fatigue, even after prolonged and strenuous effort. It suggests a seemingly boundless energy and an unflagging spirit in the pursuit of a particular goal.
It's the perfect word for describing someone with incredible stamina and dedication in a task, or someone who demonstrates tireless effort towards a difficult goal. Indefatigable truly conveys an admirable work ethic and remarkable resilience, someone who simply doesn't give up or slow down. Despite numerous setbacks, the indefatigable volunteers continued their efforts to clean up the polluted river.
That's a powerful image of sustained, dedicated effort. It speaks to a profound inner drive and a remarkable capacity for that sustained work. It's often used to commend individuals who show exceptional persistence in really challenging endeavors. Can you recall a person, perhaps someone you admire personally or publicly, whose indefatigable spirit truly stands out? What was the challenge they faced that really brought out this quality?
What's truly fascinating here, looking at this group, is how these words refine our ability to observe and report with such accuracy. They allow us to articulate precise details about quality, status, unchanging principles, lending great authority and credibility to our descriptions. They really are the hallmark of advanced and discerning communication, transforming ordinary observations into quite profound statements.
And now, for our final group, let's consider words that describe actions, obstacles, and crucial moments. These terms are vital for conveying dynamic situations, pinpointing challenges effectively, or emphasizing urgency in your communication. They add a layer of dynamism and immediate relevance to your descriptions, allowing you to articulate the dynamics of a situation, clearly explaining how something is hindered, why it's necessary, or whether it occurs by design or perhaps by chance.
We'll start with impede, which means to delay or prevent someone or something by obstructing them. The example is a common scenario, unfortunately. The heavy traffic impeded their progress to the airport.
Yes, this word focuses on the active process of hindering or blocking movement or progress. It's more than just slowing down. It implies an obstacle that actively creates a barrier or makes advancement difficult, making forward motion slower or sometimes even impossible. It suggests a definite interference.
So you'd use impede to describe various barriers, challenges, or anything that actively slows down or frustrates a process or objective. It paints a clear picture of something actively standing in the way of progress. Lack of proper funding will inevitably impede the research project's successful completion.
That's a key application. It's a very active verb that clearly identifies an obstruction. It's often used in contexts of planning, problem solving, and discussing overcoming challenges. When you're trying to achieve a goal, what's a common factor that you find tends to impede your progress?
Next, we have imperative, defined as of vital importance, crucial. The example is a weighty one. It is imperative that we address climate change immediately.
This word emphasizes absolute necessity and urgency. It really does. It goes beyond merely important to convey a non-negotiable requirement, something that simply must be done with utmost priority and without delay. There is a sense of command or absolute obligation attached to it.
It's a powerful word then for highlighting critical actions, essential policies, or vital decisions that absolutely cannot be postponed or overlooked. When something is imperative, it demands immediate and serious attention and action. Quote, "For the safety of the community, it is imperative that residents evacuate the area immediately."
Absolutely. It implies a command or a compelling need that simply cannot be ignored. It's often used in official statements, strategic planning documents, or urgent appeals for action. It conveys a strong sense of what is fundamentally necessary. What's one area in your own life, or perhaps work, where something feels truly imperative right now?
Moving on to impromptu, which means done without being planned, organized, or rehearsed. The example illustrates a potentially powerful moment. She gave an impromptu speech that moved the audience to tears.
Yes, this word highlights spontaneity and a complete lack of prior preparation. It often implies adaptability, natural talent, or the ability to think quickly on one's feet, producing something effective and authentic right there on the spot, rather than something that feels forced, overly rehearsed, or manufactured.
So, impromptu is perfect for describing unplanned events, spontaneous actions, or unscripted performances that arise naturally and without forethought. It captures the essence of something done entirely in the moment, often with surprising success or impact. The jazz band played an impromptu set that completely captivated the late-night crowd.
That's a great example of positive spontaneity. While it means unplanned, it doesn't always imply a lack of quality. Sometimes the best ideas or performances really do emerge impromptu. It suggests an innate ability to perform or respond effectively without needing extensive preparation. Have you ever found yourself in an impromptu situation where you had to think on your feet? How did that experience turn out for you?
And lastly, for this final section, we have inadvertent. It's defined as done without conscious intention, accidental. The example shows its potential negative impact. The inadvertent disclosure of confidential information caused significant problems.
This word focuses squarely on the unintentional nature of an action. It emphasizes that something occurred purely by accident rather than by design or deliberate choice. It often implies that the action, unfortunately, led to unforeseen or unintended consequences, often negative ones that were certainly not part of any deliberate plan.
So you'd use inadvertent when explaining mistakes, accidental outcomes, or unintended revelations, clearly indicating that the event was not deliberate. It helps clarify responsibility or lack thereof when something goes wrong unintentionally. The scientists made an inadvertent error in the calculations, which unfortunately skewed the final results.
Indeed. It's a key word for distinguishing between a deliberate act and an honest mistake or oversight. It speaks to a slip, a lack of careful attention, or maybe just bad luck that leads to an undesired result. It's crucial for precision when reporting incidents, especially in professional or legal contexts where intent matters greatly. Can you recall a situation where an inadvertent action led to a surprising or unexpected outcome, perhaps good or bad?
This whole last section really raises an important question, doesn't it, about how we articulate cause and effect and the nuances of agency versus obstruction. These words allow you to precisely convey whether something was a deliberate action, an unforeseen hindrance, or a crucial necessity. They add so much clarity to the narrative of events and their underlying reasons, really sharpening your ability to describe dynamic situations accurately. So after exploring all these fantastic words, what does this all mean for you, the learner? We've journeyed through just a fraction, really, of C2 level vocabulary today, but the principle is clear. Mastery isn't simply about memorizing long lists of words, is it? It's much more about active usage, strategic application, and developing a deep understanding of context and nuance. The real magic happens when you start integrating these words into your daily communication, your writing tasks, your speeches, your discussions, even your practice tests.
Absolutely. Think of these words not just as individual bricks, but as specialized tools in your linguistic toolkit. Powerful ones. Notice them when you encounter them in books, in other deep dives like this, in news articles or documentaries. Pay attention to how they're used. The more you engage with them in diverse contexts, the more organically they will become an integral part of your own expressive toolkit. This vocabulary bank serves as a solid foundation for more articulate expression, clearer comprehension, and ultimately greater confidence. Whether you're in a test situation or engaged in real-life communication, your command of language truly is your superpower, and these words empower you to wield it with unprecedented precision and impact.
Stay curious, keep practicing, and never underestimate the transformative power of finding and using that one perfectly chosen word. It really can reshape understanding, add incredible depth, and genuinely set you apart. As you continue your linguistic journey, remember, language isn't just a tool, it's a profound connection to the world and its ideas, and it's the means to express your unique perspective with unparalleled clarity. We really hope this deep dive into C2 vocabulary has been as enlightening and useful for you as it has been for us putting it together. If you found this discussion valuable, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Your support truly helps us continue creating these in-depth explorations of the English language. Thanks for listening.